Yo, what is up, Pokke Nation? Today, okay, I'm just kidding, guys. All right, so today we are jumping straight into the version 1.2 CN putting opinions for our latest two S-rank agents, Ceasar Abobar and Burnice Abobar. So without further ado, let's get into today's content. Subscribe! Alright, first unit, Ceasar King. And yes, that is a background of Balabogu. Ceasar King, what do we have over here? A Daze debuff tank. Editor crop this part out. Okay, so first of all, for Ceasar King specifically, her early access review is gonna be coming out very soon as of the time of this recording, probably in the next 2 or 3 days. So we will have a much more in-depth look at what Ceasar King has to offer. But as of this current moment, we're just gonna quickly talk about what has been revealed in the live stream, right? She basically have these following mechanics all tied to her kit. Perfect block, not to be confused with perfect parry, anti-interrupt shield, damage taken debuff, as well as a attack buff. So she does have a lot of different mechanics all bundled up very nicely into this defender class S-rank agent. She is gonna be our very first unit to ever have this perfect block mechanic. So based on the live stream, how this perfect block works is when an enemy is hitting you and you cast your EX skill, you can do like this little block. And you can kind of follow up with like a stronger attack. So that's kind of like, it's kind of reminiscent of perfect parry, except you don't have to swap units anymore. You can stay on field with Ceasar King and use your block as the parry without swapping the units. So that's basically how this block works. Very useful against high aggression bosses, I would say. Especially in scenarios like, for example, because nowadays, all of our parries, they do use up assist points. Alright, so if your assist points drops to 0, you are not gonna be able to parry anymore. You have to dodge. Whereas for Ceasar King, this is not an issue. As long as you can use this perfect block, you should be able to more or less always deal with this kind of very high aggression bosses. As of now, it's usually the big brute, the big boxer champions, the red helmet as well as the grey helmet. In the future, if we get more and more enemies with extremely high aggro, then having this kind of mechanic can be pretty useful, right? But that is not really exactly Ceasar King's main utility, I would say. I would say the main utility is coming from her anti-interrupt shield with attack buff. Now, this is a very useful buff, not specifically the attack, but the anti-interrupt shield for any on-field DPS, especially if they have very long animations. So, an example, if an attack chain for your unit, and most of their attack chain is coming from like the 4th or 5th basic attack, you would have to finish up this basic attack animation to get to the juicy hits, whether it be it your daze multiplier or your damage multiplier or even your anomaly. If it's all the way tied back towards the last few hits, then it would be in the player's best interest to finish up these attack animations, especially if they're very long. Now, the problem comes with if the enemy is very aggressive, which leads to either you getting knocked out, that means you're just basically dead, you fall down, and then you have to restart everything all over again, or you have to perfect parry or perfect dodge. Either of these options, it will cancel your attack animation, which even if you don't take damage, it still reduces your damage output because you couldn't achieve that final hit. Having this anti-interrupt shield might potentially be a very big game changer for any of our units that have a not only long animation, but big multipliers towards the last few hits, right? So pretty good mechanic. The absolute value, we'll kind of have to see how long does the buff applied and debuff applied by Ceasar last for the battle, as well as their respective values, because she's not a stunner, right? She's not a stunner, she's a defender. So we're not exactly sure if her daze speed is gonna be competitive enough with a traditional defender such as Lycon, Koleda, or Qingyi. So if she dazes too slowly, is it worth the trade-off? Like, are the buffs provided and the debuffs applied worth the trade-off of stunning at a faster or slower speed? This one we kind of have to wait and see when she comes out in the C server, right? So that's gonna be that. But one thing that's for sure is, aside from like raw damage and all that kind of stuff, it is definitely a much more comfortable and defensive option in endgame content with high pressure enemies, reminiscent of Zhongli. Yep, CN community is kind of just thinking she's like the Zhongli of Zenless Zone Zero, especially for content such as our current what is the guy's name, Disputed Note, where it is not tied to the duration in which you clear the enemies, it is tied to how many times you die. So if you are up against content like this, where survival is a higher priority compared to clear speed, then Ceasar King and a big ass shield is always going to be very, very, very good, right? So it will depend on the endgame content that MiHoYo wants to go through going forward into the future. The supplementary A rank for Ceasar King's banner is going to be Piper and Anton. Average 4 stars, I'm gonna keep it a buck, not that crazy. Piper could see some plays for players without Jane Doe and still want to play an anomaly team, which if that's the case, you should have got Jane Doe, right? But it is what it is. This 4 stars not too crazy. So jumping into the value over here, if you have long attack chain with a high aggro environment, Ceasar has incredible 10 out of 10 value. Otherwise, it's not that crazy, but it can still be used for the most part. So, like I mentioned now, CN feels that Ceasar is basically a Zhongli, and it will very likely be incredibly powerful for this specific agent, and we all come to love and know. And where? Ellen. Substituting Lycon as the day slot due to Ceasar's anti-interrupt shield, buffs and debuffs. But more specifically for the anti-interrupt shield. Because I'm not sure if you guys have noticed, one of Ellen's weakest point is if you are using her with high aggression enemies, you almost never get a chance to reach that final basic attack, which is where she spins out the little blade and she does a spin. You almost never reach this part because the enemies are hitting so many times. So what often happens is that you just kind of have to just dodge attack, dodge parry, and then restart the chain all over again, which is very, very annoying. And there's not a lot that you can do to circumvent this situation unless you have this anti-interrupt shield that basically allows Ellen to phase tank the enemy attack and just finish up the attack animation regardless. So with this anti-interrupt, Ellen's rotation could feel a lot smoother. Aside from that, the buffs and debuffs provided are also very, very universal with pretty much any DPS, not just Ellen. Now, one question is, should we use Ceasar King to replace Lycon or Sokaku? Generally speaking, if we are talking about absolute highest damage output, Sokaku being still in place with the team, especially if you unlock Sokaku's Mindscapes, it will be pretty good because you can now stack on both of their attack buffs together and focus them all into Ellen, right? And Ceasar's utility, because we have seen from the kit, she also kind of function as like a daze unit. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to run 2 different daze units at the same time, right? But of course, we also have to kind of factor in the fact that Sokaku's attack animations are really, really slow, especially to stack on the Vortex buff given to Ellen. It can be quite uncomfortable, whereas for Lycon, you do have the stun damage multiplier as well as Ice Red Shred pretty much almost instantly. So probably have to wait and see a little bit how they actually play in actual battle. But theoretically speaking, based on raw numbers, stacking the buffs, debuffs from both Ceasar and Ellen, Ceasar and Sokaku should help Ellen do the absolute highest damage output, right? That being said, the same concept can also be applied for future units with long attack chain. So right now, we basically only have Ellen and Zhu Yuan as our limited S rank DPS that's not anomaly based, right? Zhu Yuan is very quick. She's very quick, she's very bursty, pew, swap out, and then swap back in very fast. But Ellen is the opposite, where Ellen is like an on-field DPS and her attack animations are very long, so you do have to kind of ease through and get through the last hits in order to get the highest possible damage output. So if in the future, we get any sort of units similar to Ellen, which also has a pretty long attack animation, then Ceasar King can definitely also see some use in this kind of team comps as well, right? So having the ability, because of the anti-interrupt shield, to finish a long attack chain is absolutely crucial to any long attack chain DPSs, aside from the buffs and debuffs, which are also very, very valuable, right? So if in the future, if they release more and more high aggression enemies like the Boxer, if they keep punching you in the face, with long attack animation units, then Ceasar King will definitely have very, very good value, right? So that's gonna be that for Ceasar King. And now jumping into Burnice. I swear, she reminds me of Harley Quinn so much. She reminds me of Harley Quinn / Jinx. Wanna join me? Come and play. I will shoot you. Okay, anyways, yeah, Burnice, all field burn DPS anomaly. Very likely to be one of the core members for Disorder team comps, Disorder Anomaly team comps, very, very good for Jane Doe or Grace. Alright. The heat mechanic from Burnice, based on the live trailer, it basically allows us to apply burn even when she is off field. The key word is off field. So the rotation for Burnice should be quite similar to like a quick swap DPS, where we use our skills, swap back into our anomaly DPS, either Jane Doe or Grace, and let the burn build up while we're still dealing anomaly damage with our on-field anomaly. We do need to see if swapping Burnice out when she's casting her EX skill is possible, because where we're seeing a live trailer, it is where she uses the 2 little flamethrower thingy, right? I don't think the attack animation is going to be short, because you are like constantly applying the flames. So we do have to see if it's possible to swap out during the EX. If we could, then that should be very, very, very good, right? This archetype, generally speaking, they are usually less prone to power creep, because she is not exactly a DPS. She's like an off-field DPS that is more or less kind of like a supportive role for our main on-field DPS for any anomaly units, right? So she can always pivot into another anomaly disorder team. So if one day you don't want to use Grace anymore, they release like another shock anomaly unit, you can easily slap on Burnice. If one day release like a Ether anomaly unit, or even like another burn anomaly unit, having the ability to apply anomaly status while being off-field is always going to be very, very good, right? So she is more or less quite not as weak to power creep. Performance for Burnice is going to be dependent on how fast is her swapping, how fast does she build up anomaly, and how much is her overall total burn damage. Now, all this kind of stuff we'll kind of have to wait when Burnice actually comes up, because we don't really know what they function, right? So she will very likely be a key teammate for anomaly disorder team comps such as Grace or Jane Doe, especially since our slot 2 nowadays is going to be Seth. I think Seth, being the only unit that can provide us with 100 anomaly proficiency as well as a 20% all-type anomaly res debuff, there isn't really much of a better alternative for slot 2, unless they make a better version of Seth in the future. So they're going to do that. One thing to consider when pulling for Burnice though is her supplementary A rank agents, the rate up A rank agents, Lucy and Nicole. Lucy and Nicole, they are one of, if not the best A rank agents. It is kind of like getting Team Yun and Pella on the banner, right? Very, very, very good. Both of these units, they are supports, so they're not very easily power crept. You can use them with a lot of different teams, and they have excellent, excellent mindscapes, namely Lucy's M2 and Nicole's M6, right? So very, very good A rank agents on Burnice's banner, right? So the overall verdict, if you are gonna be using an anomaly team, she is pretty much gonna be our very first 11 out of 10. Right? Otherwise, not that crazy. So she is kind of like the Kafka or Yingling for Zenless Zone Zero. Having the ability to apply off-field burn would be absolutely crucial to almost any anomaly disorder team comps, because it is essentially quote-unquote free damage without taking away any of our on-field DPS uptime. And this is one of a very annoying weaknesses that anomaly teams might face, because aside from Seth, we don't really have any other buffers that can improve our damage by that much. Maybe we have Lucy and Rina, but having the ability to stack on anomaly at a faster pace is always going to be the most important point for any anomaly team, right? So between our shock, burn, corruption, and assault, which are the 4 key elements that actually deal damage, disorder will always gain value as long as we have this all-field burn DPS. So value for Burnice, if you are playing anomaly, generally speaking, it's gonna be very, very, very good. It's kind of like, yeah, like I mentioned, Kafka or Yingling, right? Some people from CN also suggested playing a mono fire team with Soldier 11, Burnice / Lucy or Coletta, using Burnice all-field burn as an additional source of damage on top of Soldier 11's raw damage output. Then your third slot, you either run Lucy to buff our entire team because it's a teamwork attack buff, or we can run Coletta for breaking the enemy team faster. So we would probably definitely need further testing to see if this mono fire team is going to be working, and it will definitely dependent on how much damage is Burnice burn coming, because as of the current live stream, I don't believe we see any semblance of actual buffs provided by Burnice aside from the all-field burn, right? We'll have to kind of wait and see, but look forward to what they have to offer in the future. So final verdict, if you are going to be an Ellen main, or if you are going to be interested in playing any sort of DPS with a long attack animation, Who the hell is doing this? Yeah, I swear it's not on purpose. Yeah, so in summary, for elements and units with future long chain DPS, Ceasar is definitely gonna be extremely valuable. Whereas if you are an anomaly main, Burnice is definitely gonna be the one, right? So that's gonna be that. Future Outlook 1.2 is a very support oriented patch, with the focus on either buffing up our long chain DPS with Ceasar or anomaly DPS with Burnice. It is not a main DPS patch, which is what we got for 1.0 and to a certain extent 1.1 with Jane Doe, right? Although Qing is pretty much like a support-oriented unit. So players building either of these teams should definitely consider one of them to greatly improve their overall performance, damage output, as well as comfort. This patch in general for 1.2, it is what you would call like a vertical investment patch, because there's not a lot of new team comps coming out from these two units. Although Perfect Block is like a new mechanic, which could be quite interesting, but it isn't exactly a team comp, right? So these are basically units that will enhance whichever team you're currently playing and take them to the next level. But if you are currently playing Zenless Zone Zero, and of course if you don't care about waifu or gyat or bobas or husbandos, and you have no issues with the current setup that you are running, be it your Ellen, Lycon, Sokaku, be it your Jane Doe, Seth, and Qing Yi, be it your Juan, Qing, and Nicole, if you don't really feel that you need the improvement, then you could just wait and see 1.3 banner units. If we get new archetypes, new mechanics in 1.3, then it's gonna be pretty awesome, right? So yeah, always remember to account for the actual playing experience. The Shogun, your fields, will always remain as the most important criteria for any unit in Zenless Zone Zero, regardless of the theoretical damage output, and this will vary between players, right? So with that, dude, these are just so nice. Oh my god. With that, we have come to the end of our CM pulling opinion for version 1 between Zenless Zone Zero, Ceasar, and Burnice. The word of the day is going to be fire. Alright, write it down in the comments below if you have watched the end of the video, and let me know what you guys think. Join Discord, join YouTube, join Twitch. All the best for our gacha pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.